what people have or have not worn at funerals as a message to the departed person, because people don't always like the person who's died, do they?
No, that's very true. Death and a Death Cafe. Hello, I'm Victor M. Sweeney. Here today on Death and, we are going to talk with Susan Barsky Reid, the mother of the founder of a Death Cafe. In fact, the Death Cafe. In this episode, I think you're going to learn something really interesting. And honestly, I was surprised again and again to know that people come together to have coffee and tea and cakes and cookies and sit around and talk about the most profound happening in our lives. Now, before we jump into that, I want to just encourage people to like and subscribe. Please follow me where you can. More than that, if you like this as you're listening, I'd like you to share it with a friend. Make your own little death cafe. And talk about these big, serious, important things together. Speaking of togetherness, I do want to open the show, as we always do, with some questions. So, here we go. Oh, this is great. Okay, here's a wonderful question. Okay, this is from Jacob French. What do you think about saying sorry for your loss to people who've lost loved ones? I got to tell you, I think it works, okay? I think it's okay because it's true. I'm sorry that you've lost someone. I do sometimes wonder if it borders on disingenuousness. For this reason, I once called an insurance company for a family, right? They had a life insurance policy, and the person on the other end of the line picks up, this is so-and-so from Big City Insurance Co., and I tell them why I'm there, and they say, oh, I'm sorry for your loss. And I told them, my name is Victor from the funeral home, right? But they were kind of pre-programmed to give out this response that just didn't, kind of rang hollow, if you know what I mean. Maybe it's okay if you're saying it to a friend, but I think we're to the point where it's a little overused. So what would I encourage you to say? My favorite is, I'm really sorry. Just leave it at that. Don't tack on that last part. Or if you have a friend, give them a hug. Say nothing. I find oftentimes words fall short at times like these. And honestly, just the physical closeness is often enough. If you're on the phone with a friend maybe, far away, who's lost a loved one, honestly, if they're close to you, I like to say, this really sucks. Just tell them the truth, because it does. And honestly, just let them know you're there to talk or there for them in whatever capacity that is. And better yet, offer something. Say, hey, can I call you 2 days after the funeral? Or if they live nearby, can I bring over a meal? Offering to do something practical. Because it is in our human nature to say, well, if there's anything I can do, let me know. And the person never lets you know. So instead, maybe impose upon them a little bit. Say you're going to do something at a specific time and place, because those actions, I think, are really the key, rather than platitudes. Okay, here's a good question. This is from Shine On Swifty Queen. Do you listen to music while you're working? Well, I can guess what music you listen to, Shine On Swifty Queen. But I do not listen to T-Swift generally while embalming. I like to listen to like electronic music sometimes, but I'll tell you, there is one album I listen to again and again and again on repeat, and that is Bob Dylan, the bootleg series, Telltale Signs. Just kind of some of his darker, bluesier, folkier songs, I guess, from the 80s and 90s. And for whatever reason, that one sticks with me, because there are lots of songs about death. And I don't know what it is, but I find if I listen to something new, my sense of time gets interrupted. So if I listen to the same album every time, I can say, oh, by track 8, I should be here. Or boy, if I've hit this song, it's taken me a long time to get this body done. As far as listening to music at other times, I generally don't. Kind of faux pas to listen to music in the hearse while you're driving to the cemetery. And likewise around the office, if I'm writing an obit or meeting with a family, can't exactly have music on. I will tell you, on the record, my least favorite song is On Eagle's Wings by Michael Joncas. Absolute worst song. It's because I hear it every single week at funerals, and I think it's trite and boring, and it's also hard to sing. But really, I think every mortician has their kind of go-to comfort music when they're working. So thanks for the question. Today on Death And, we have a very wonderful guest joining us from the UK. Her name is Susan Barsky Reid. She is a psychotherapist and mother of the late Jon Underwood, the founder of the first Death Cafe. He passed away suddenly in 2017, but since then, his idea of people coming together to talk about death and life, and really all the things that we talk about on the show, has spread throughout the world. They are available in, I think she said, 93 countries. It's really fascinating. I think you'll like it. You might even be tempted to start up or join a death cafe yourself. So without further ado, here is our new friend, Susan Barsky Reid. Susan, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to talk to you.
It's very good to be here.
I want to get a little history on Death Cafe first, but I have to tell you, before we even begin, that I heard about Death Cafe back when I was in mortuary school in 2013. And not only that, it was in one of the textbooks I owned.
Oh, what?
Death Cafe was mentioned way over here in Minnesota, not, from what I understand, too long after it was founded. People were talking about this way over here.
That's amazing.
I want to talk about Jon, but can you tell us what Death Cafe is?
Death Cafe, it's very simple. It's when a group of people get together, they drink a hot drink and have some cake and talk about death and dying. They talk about it in a way that is unstructured. It's the people who come and gather together who decide what they're going to talk about. And it's a free discussion about death and dying, usually hosted by somebody. It doesn't have to be, but usually hosted.
Okay, so you have this kind of, I don't know, clandestine meeting. Who's the host? Is the host someone like yourself who's a psychotherapist, or is it like me, an undertaker, or is it who can it be?
Anybody who wants to do it and agrees to the Death Cafe principles.
What are those?
Those are that it's not for profit,
Okay.
that it is not there to lead people to any product or course of action, that it's an unstructured discussion. There are no topics, prompts, guest speakers, anything like that, that all the impetus for discussion comes from the people who are attending.
See, I have a lot of discussions with people who are on their deathbed. But of course, as the mortician coming in, I'm not saying I have something to sell, but I obviously have something I will be providing. That's why we're talking about it.
Yeah.
So you're saying Death Cafe is something different. It's just talking about death as an idea, as an event maybe in the future, but not. There's nobody necessarily involved with the death there except for the person who's going to be doing it. But so when you lead this, do you lead it as? I assume you lead them. Do you lead it as a psychotherapist, or do you do it as a mom?
I do it as a person who's going to die, as we are all going to die. That's the only qualification for going to a death cafe, is that you're going to die one day. And the way that I lead it, and the way that Jon and I decided it should be led, is that we ask people why they've come today to this death cafe, And that is enough to start a really interesting conversation.
Okay, so let me ask you, why are you here today with me?
Because it just appealed to me, the idea of running. I've done groups as a psychotherapist of various kinds during my working career. And so I've got some skills and experience in leading groups. So I was keen to do it. And also, it was really lovely to do something with my son. And I was very appreciative whilst he was alive that not many people actually work with their child and have a sort of a joint enterprise they can do together. So it was really lovely to do that with him. I really treasure those memories.
That's really beautiful. I work at a funeral home, obviously, and one of my sons, Arthur, he's my middle son. He comes to work with me a lot. And of course, he's only 9, so I can't.
Well,
He
yeah,
doesn't help me lift bodies or anything yet. Although I told him, I said, when you're 14, and if you're strong enough, you can start coming on night call with me. Which I'm not sure if that's responsible yet. If I'm like waking up my kid at midnight to drive on a death call with me to somebody's house. But he really does. He likes to work with Dad, and
yeah,
I even now I love to have him around the building because there is something very special, I think, about like the parent-child bond and just sharing something in either direction that you really are passionate about.
yeah. I really get that, and it was lovely to do. I mean, John and I did them separately, but we did some together, and that was really a really wonderful experience.
So just as I was reading up a little bit about you two, but would you tell us that are here today? John led Death Cafe talking about his own death. Um, and then in 2017, he did that. He did the thing that all of us are going to do. Um,
Yeah.
but it was unexpected.
Well, he wasn't feeling well, and we later found out that he had leukemia, and he took his children swimming, didn't feel well, asked a friend if they'd take the children home, left the swimming pool and collapsed and never regained consciousness, and he'd had a brain hemorrhage.
I'm sorry. That's really hard.
Yeah.
You know, that's one of those things where there's a lot more consolation if someone is cognizant and can tell you goodbye.
Yeah.
But were you there when he passed, Susan?
Yes, there were quite a few of us there.
How old were your grandkids then?
I'm trying to work it out. So Frank was 10 and Gina was 6 going on 7.
How did you talk to them about their dad? I mean, I can only assume if it's like my house, we have a very death centric life.
Yeah.
Kind of oxymoronic, but we have a death-centric life. And so we talk about death all the time around the kitchen table, before bed. It's just, the other night I had a death call during bedtime and had to leave, as I was picking up the books to read to my kids. But we talk about it a lot. And so with kind of a death-centric family, was this something, I mean, obviously it surprised them, but how do you talk to your grandkids about that as someone who then, is.
As best as you can. There's no
Yeah.
easy way to do it.
No.
The grandparents did it with their mum. It was not a pleasant experience. I mean, that time there were lots of not pleasant experiences, and that was one of them.
Have the kids since come to any death cafes with you? Or I understand your daughter does this too.
Yeah. Yes. She's trained to be. She's now a doctor. Trained to be a doctor.
Yeah.
Following John's death, she decided she needed to do in life what she had always wanted to do, and that was trained to be a doctor, and studied really hard, and has recently qualified as a doctor. Right. And the children are both involved in the admin of Death Cafe.
Are they?
Yeah. Yes, Frank, the older one's just gone to university. He's 18 now.
See, and that's the thing I think it's really worth pondering, when death arrives, especially so uninvitedly. It really changes everything. Not only in just who's sitting around the table, but yeah, like with your daughter, I think it does crystallize. It can, with the right mindset, really crystallize a person's goals in life. Because I think you do see that things are very brief and tenuous. Has John's death, has that changed your practice of psychotherapy or how you run a death cafe now too?
Well, I stopped running death cafes for a long time because I just felt like I wasn't in the right headspace to do it. It was, I felt too sad. I've recently started doing them again, so I'm now doing them monthly again, which is really good. And I still feel sad because, of course, I'm missing more than I can say, really.
I think it's okay. Like, it's okay to be sad.
Yeah.
There are so many times where you get to a funeral or even around a deathbed, people will say like, "Oh, he's in a better place," or at least he's not suffering now. But I don't know how much those things help.
No, because you miss that person is the reality. You're still here and they aren't.
But do you see his fingerprints on it all the time though still?
Oh yeah. Yes, and I want to keep it because I do a lot of the admin, as does Jules, my daughter. And we try and keep John's vision as he made it. It's a lovely way to honour his memory.
What started it? As far as you know, what started him doing all of this? Because it does seem, at least according to what we normally talk about in polite company, we don't talk about this.
Well, John became a Buddhist, and Buddhism was really important to him. And I believe that Buddhists contemplate death every day. It's a really good idea. And it was from this he thought that people were denying death. And the point he was making is that death cafes are to help you make the most of your finite life. And he thought that lots of ills in the world were caused by people denying death, like materialism and other things. He was really clever in some of the stuff he talked about. I didn't understand that well, but that's why he started it. And he decided he was working in the town council, and he and his wife decided that he could take some time off to develop some things around death and dying, and that's what he did. And it's a great testament. I mean, there've been over 20,000 death cafes in, I think it was 93 countries the last time I looked.
Wow.
And it's quite astonishing, isn't it, really?
It is. Well, I like, as I was kind of looking into it, I like that the bar of entry is very low, right? Just be mortal. That's that's it.
Yeah, it is. It's really simple.
Because one thing I was thinking about, so every once in a while, right, I'll end up going to somebody's deathbed because they want to get things maybe written down that they'd wanted to put off,
Okay.
right? So typically the people that I visit with are people that might not have gone to a death cafe except from their own bedside, right?
Yeah.
But what's really lovely, I think, about when I do find myself in a situation like that is how terribly open people are. I think when you do realize the finiteness of this,
Yeah.
you become very open. So I had a gal. We'll get her picture up. Her name was Anita, and she'd moved up here from the big city. Didn't really have any connections. Her husband was here, of course. But I got a call from her husband, and he's like, "Hey, Victor, Anita's not doing so great. She wants to meet with you." And so I drove out to where they lived and walked into the house. And the house was just full of like Oriental paintings and furniture and tchotchkes, right? And she's on a hospice bed in her living room. And they pull up a chair, and I just got to sit right next to her bed, and we put down the rail, And I'm a stranger, right? We've never met. I knew her husband a little bit. I'd never met her before. And she reaches out and grabs my hand, and I just hold her hand. And we talked, a little bit about work. I think, but we talked for an hour and a half. My wife is sending me texts that I didn't read till after the fact, being like, "Are you going to be home for lunch? Where are you?" And what I thought was going to be, a 35-minute, write down some notes, turned into just an hour and a half of talking about this amazing woman and her life and the things that she loved and some of the things that she did. But really, we just spent time like talking about my family and her family and became like really close, intimate friends. I think because we could see kind of that specter of death just casting its shadow across the room. Do you find that you've become friends after Death Cafe or during Death Cafe in that same way?
During Death Cafe, many, many times, usually, in fact, there's a real closeness between the people that attend, that because you're talking about something really intimate and personal, and because that you don't know any of the other people and you may never see them again, you can afford to say whatever you like. And I mean, as a host, I don't know what every host does, but I will share what I want to share about my own personal stuff. It's not like when I'm a therapist and I don't say very much, and other people say lots of stuff. It's a much more equal and even exchange, and I am a member as well as a host of that Death Cafe, and you talk about the most amazing and personal and things, and I always feel so close to the people that are there. It's really lovely.
Yeah, the intimacy, like the intimacy of death. There's this old phrase, right? Like the veil is thin, right? And I think about that a lot, because I guess someone who works, exclusively in the death space, like you do become very intimately attached, not only to the dead in some ways, right? You get to know them like through the stories and the eyes of their family in some ways, but you get really attached to their families. So that death call I took during bedtime, just a couple days ago, was a gal that I knew fairly well, and you get the call and they tell you who it is, and your heart kind of sinks a little bit, and then I sent out a text to the son, because I'd buried both of his in-laws. I'd buried his dad in 2017. It's the same year that John passed, and still had his number on my phone. And I sent him a text saying, "Hey, I'm going to be over to see you in about 15 minutes. Just let me get dressed." And you walk in the door, and because you've had these really intense, intimate experiences, you're kind of old friends in a weird way, but only at this particular time.
Yeah.
Right. Like he's not relying on me to give him a ride to the airport. But when mom dies, he's like, "You're the one I'm going to call." Or he had his father-in-law passed away in Arizona, and the first thing they did, they said, "What are we going to do?" And he goes, "Oh, call Victor. Like Victor knows what to do."
Yeah.
Like for this particular situation, this is what this guy does. And so, sat down with the family just the other day to make funeral arrangements, and like, we're laughing, like you shouldn't be laughing, grandma's dead. But we're old friends, because we've like forged this relationship at only the worst times. And so I guess one of my follow-up questions is like, is Death Cafe also fun? Because my funeral arrangements were actually kind of fun.
Yeah, it
in
can
a way.
be. You laugh at least as much as you cry, and probably more. Yeah. Yeah, because there are funny things that people tell you.
Just give me an example of something that's light in Death Cafe, because the name itself, doesn't lend itself to thinking about things that are funny. But just give me an example if you have one on mind.
John did choose it specially to be shocking, the name,
Sure.
Yes. Although people have said to me, that's a terrible name. Call it something nice,
Yeah.
But I think the most I can say is what people have or have not worn at funerals for people they like or do not like.
Yeah.
And as a message to the departed person, because people don't always like the person who's died, do they?
No, that's very true.
Yeah.
No, the name. Okay, so I had the same thought. I won't lie to you. I had the same thought that Death Cafe is a rather shocking name, but I think if you called it something more euphemistic, like if you called it like Passings Group, like I don't know if you'd probably get the genuineness that you'd actually want.
No.
Also, it sounds like you're selling something.
People do try and charge for it and all sorts of things. Yeah.
What kind of people show up? Is it? I have a preconceived notion that it's like old people, but
Yeah.
who comes to these things?
I think since I've started again, it's been mostly older people. And that's maybe partly because I have it during the daytime rather than in the evening. But when I used to do them when John was still alive, we got an awful lot of young people who'd read about it on social media. And that's really how Death Cafe first got off the ground, because people ran with it on social media, I think.
Sure.
Yeah.
And so I obviously it's taken off all over the world. Do
Yeah.
you do you do you still get people reaching out to you as someone adjacent to the founder?
Yes. I get interviewed quite a lot. Yeah. You're the second one this week. Oh, and the other lady talked to me about John passing away, and I had to say, I don't. I hate that expression, passing away.
Yeah, John died.
He
He did
died.
he did the thing. He did the thing that he
Yeah.
talked about all those years.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, euphemism is really tricky. I wrote a book, came out in October, but I had a segment talking about euphemism because it's really tough, and I think it's natural, right? We want to kind of cover our nakedness in a lot of ways with euphemism, but I think some are okay and some are suspect. So, like saying someone died, you read it in the paper, so and so died, and it hits you like a brick, but that's good.
Yeah, it is.
I had this thought about euphemism where it's, we want to say it's Bill's cremains instead of saying it's his remains or his pulverized bone dust, which is a mouthful. So maybe that's why we don't say it. But it's okay to say someone died, or it's okay to say things like we're gonna use the hearse instead of calling it a coach, or we're gonna go to the cemetery instead of calling it like the memorial park. It's just call it what it is. It's okay.
Yeah.
But no, it's funny because I think when I first heard of Death Cafe, my first thought, to be honest, was like, oh, a bunch of hippies trying to sell this like, lovey-dovey idea of death. But actually, it's the exact opposite maybe of what my notion was.
Yeah. It's about reality, isn't it? It's about people's experiences and thoughts and feelings.
If you took the idea behind Death Cafe, right, essentially think about your death every day, and you broadcast that to the world, what changes would you foresee if people actually did that?
You would hope that you would try and enjoy what you're doing now.
Yeah.
And that was John's idea, and it's really sound. It's really simple, isn't it? And I don't always do it.
It sounds like he lived it out. I mean, you took your kids to the pool on your last day of consciousness. That's just about right.
Yeah. He says there's one of the things that's on YouTube where he says you never know when's the last time you're going to hug your kid, and it's really true.
Yeah, no, it's beautiful, and it is unfair because some of us are given the gift of kind of knowing when the end is coming, or this lady whose funeral I just arranged had a fantastic day on Saturday. All of her family came to the nursing home. She was up, she was active, she was lucid. And then everything kind of dropped off the cliff and she passed away, a couple days later. But you got this last really good day. And I think it is hard, and it does seem terribly unfair when people are snatched away without warning. But that's part of it too, though. That's part of it. There's been a long debate, at least around the funeral home, with my boss and I, about which is better, right? Is it better to have a kind of long, drawn-out death where you can say goodbye and you can make final plans and you can do some of the things that you wish to do, or is it better to just not wake up one day and have it be really fast? What do you think? Weigh in.
I think, for me, I'd like to know. I'd like to have that experience along with all the other experiences, of giving birth and losing people and all of those. I would like to know. I think maybe it would be very painful, emotionally painful, and probably
or both.
Yeah.
But how different is that from like the other end of giving birth and bringing life? Like it is both. It is both terribly emotionally and physically painful. My lovely wife tells me. And
did you and your boss come to any conclusions about which you prefer?
No, I think either way is both good and bad, right? Like having the ability to say goodbye is wonderful. Just not waking up one morning is great. I guess if I had to choose, because I am sometimes a very selfish man, I think just not waking up, like in my own bed, would be wonderful. Right. Because then you don't have any worries. You had a dream and that just extends in perpetuity, but also much harder for your family, as you know. And that's maybe where the rubber meets the road. Jury's out on that one.
Do you believe in life after death?
Absolutely. Absolutely. As to what form that takes, I have my thoughts, but at least everything I've experienced would tell me that there's something inside of us that does not die. And what that does, we can argue about, but I would hold on very firmly and fight back against anybody who would say that when you die, just all of you is nothingness. There's definitely a something in us that's very apparent. When you look into 100 sets of dead eyes every year, you're like, okay, so there's something that animated those because yes, okay, they weren't dry, okay, but like there's a spark in there that was there, and now it's not.
Yes.
And so that tells me that spark has to go somewhere.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. What are your thoughts?
Well, very similar, because I've seen, several people who've died before they died and after they died. And I agree with you. It's a completely different thing. It's a casing. Their body is a casing and something's left or gone or... And yes, I agree. It's energy, and it must have gone somewhere, because you can't destroy energy, can you?
No, and it I think it's interesting because they've done, they try to like see, how much does a soul weigh, right? And I don't think it matters whether it has weight or not is immaterial. That's actually that's a terrible pun. But no, it is immaterial. And the thing is, like, who cares if we can measure it? Because like, I know it's there. I've seen it. Like I've experienced love and know that like love is not simply hugging my children. Like love is so fundamentally different. And the thing I usually say is like, you can love someone who is dead, right? Like you still love your son.
Yeah.
Like the fact that he's not physically here to receive it has no bearing on that love.
No.
So that would tell me that something like love is immaterial. And if it's immaterial, it doesn't seem to matter whether someone is dead or alive. It still exists. And the part of me that experiences that is my soul, or we could render it in Latin. We could say animus, if that's a little less controversial. But there's something in us that experiences that. And so why would I be so foolish as to think that that ends when it seems like all those metaphysical things carry on? What is Death Cafe going to look like in the future? Because someday you are going to be wrapped up in this great big thing that we're discussing.
Yeah.
Did Jon leave behind a plan? Do you leave behind a plan on where you see Death Cafe going when you go that way?
John had asked Jules if anything happened to him, would she, that's my daughter, his sister, to take it over. And that's what she's done. And I think her plan is for John's kids, and maybe, but I have some of the grandchildren who live actually on your side of the pond to also have a hand in that as well. I have another son called Matt who lives in New Jersey, and one of his children, who is 16, is also helping with the admin of Death Cafe. So it's a real family affair, and hopefully it'll be passed on to the children. I hope so.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Is there, can I ask you a controversial question?
Yeah.
Okay. So you said right away, one of the rules of Death Cafe is you can't sell anything, right? What are your thoughts on undertakers? I have to ask.
I don't really have any, they're people doing a job. John, as well as doing Death Cafe, had something called Funeral Advisor. I don't know whether you've ever heard of this.
No.
It was a website that he started that was for people in the funeral industry to post and to have people recommend people who are good at doing it. I can't think of the correct term.
Sure.
But, and I don't know what's happened to that. I suspect that's just gone by the wayside. But John was very keen to develop that as well.
Yeah. Well, it seems to me like what he has developed is honestly really fantastic. It subverted my expectations, and I think it's important. Let me ask you this before we wrap up. If someone were to want to start a Death Cafe in their little town or their basement, how do they go about doing it?
They go on to our website, which is just www.deathcafe.com, and that will give you all the things you need to know. And you can then send emails in, which Jules gets and will answer. But it's really simple.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, it's a really easy thing.
And it should be. It should be, because this is, I mean, yes, it's this great big stalking thing that I think each of us has to contend with, but it is terribly simple at the end of the day. Death is one of the simpler things when it comes down to it. Susan, thank you so much for joining us today on Death and I wish you all the best and so much more.
Right. It's been very good to speak to you. Thank you.
Now, the intersection of Susan's world and mine should be extremely obvious, right? Both centered on death. But as I reflect on our conversation, I'm really struck with the idea that these conversations are meant to happen with just normal people, with no agenda, right? They're not trying to sell anything or be anything. No one's trying to pose as something else. It's simply people coming together who don't even necessarily know each other. I like the anonymity of it, especially when I couple it with my own experience of talking to people acutely around death. I always have a job to do, right? There's always a task at hand. There's always questions I have to ask and find answers to. There's something I have to give them, whether it's my time or my talent or, sell them a casket or an urn. There's always something a little more transactional and with a goal in mind. And I think it would be very freeing to be able to talk about death in the way that I like to do in a Death Cafe, something without any real agenda or any end game. And in some ways, I think that's what we're doing here at Death and. you and me, dear listener, just talking very frankly and openly about a really big topic, and also about life. Well, wasn't it funny when she said we do almost as much or more laughing than we do crying at Death Cafe? And I found that to be the case, that life is such a wonderful thing. It overshadows death. It overshadows death. So with these things in mind, I would just really invite you to like this podcast, subscribe wherever you get it. And furthermore, if you have a question, even if it's a silly one, please send it along to deathandpodcast@gmail.com, or better yet, leave us a voice memo. Let us hear what you have to say at deathandpodcast.com. But until then, join me again sometime on Death And.